With duck season right around the corner, are you in the market for a new pair of waders this duck season? Well, if that's the case, then stay tuned because I'm going to break it all down for you and let you know what I find the differences are between cheap waders and the more expensive brands in the market today. This is Last Stop Waterfowl Outdoors. All right, guys, so believe it or not, that's one of the most commonly asked questions on our podcast or on our social media platforms when we're talking about duck hunting gear. What should I buy when it comes to waders, and how much money should I spend on a good pair of waders? Well, that's kind of a funny question to me now because a good pair of waders can come in many shapes and forms. It doesn't mean that it has to be expensive in order to be a good pair of waders, and it doesn't mean because you don't spend a lot of money that you're buying something that's not going to last you. What I can tell you is that from my experience over the years, waders have come a long way as we sit now in 2024. Waterfowl season. You know, when I first started duck hunting with my dad when I was a kid, there weren't a whole lot of options when it came to waders. A lot of the options of waders out on the market were not near the brands that there are now. Most of them were made with just regular old rubber, like you would find the old Lacrosse Granger rubber boots nowadays. That's what a lot of the waders were made of then. They had brands such as Hodgman and Lacrosse, which pretty much dominated the market when I was a kid growing up. And then eventually the technology switched to neoprene, which offered insulation, 100% waterproof. And then of course you had insulation in the boots and stuff like that, that changed the technology from the old rubber uninsulated waders to now having options for insulated waders. Well, as we enter 2024 hunting season, the technology has also added some new additions to it, such as breathable waders. So people often ask me, they say, okay, what can I expect when I buy a cheap pair of waders? Well, typically what you're going to find in a less expensive pair of waders nowadays is going to be neoprene options on the market. And there are a million companies out there that are making neoprene options that are very affordable, coming in typically right around the $70 to $100 price range. If you get on Amazon, for example, you will find millions of companies literally that offer neoprene hunting waders that have insulation in the neoprene itself being an insulator, as well as insulation in the boots. You can still find some non-insulated versions as well, but typically when you're purchasing a neoprene pair of cheap waders, you're going to find some sort of insulation in the boot. Now, what affects the cost of a cheap neoprene wader is also what affects the price of a more expensive wader a lot of times as far as the boot technology goes. The more insulation or the higher number of insulation that's available in that boot, typically you're going to pay a little bit more for it. Now, really, it all boils down to where you hunt at as a hunter. So, for example, if you're in the South like us, here in Louisiana, typically you're not going to be looking for high gram insulation in a boot or in the wader itself because our climate is just a lot warmer even in the winter months. We typically don't get the cold temperatures that you guys up in the northern portions of the flyways will get. Therefore, we don't need the same amount of insulation as guys in the northern portions. So typically down here in Louisiana, a lot of guys can get away with a non-insulated boot. But if you're going to be hunting and the style of hunting that you're going to be doing is going to be standing in water, even in those colder months, you're going to want that insulation in a boot to be able to keep your feet warm. So typically anything from like a 600 gram to a 1200 gram insulation is going to be more than sufficient enough for hunters down in the southern portions of the flyways. Now, what I find is that most insulated, waders such as neoprene waders, I'm speaking of specifically here, what could also make a difference in price when you're looking at those is going to be the thickness of the neoprene itself. So some of your really cheap waders on the market, when you may go on Amazon, look at the density of the neoprene itself because some of them are going to be a lot thinner than others. So a thicker neoprene is going to be better for those of you who are on the go, maybe hunting public land, and depending on your terrain of public land or where you hunt, even if it's not public, the terrain that you hunt, such as, timber hunting, you're going to have a lot of laydowns, a lot of stick-ups. You're going to be snagging those waders on a lot of debris. You're going to want a thicker neoprene in a situation like that. Now, as you get, out of neoprene waders and you start getting into some of your more expensive waders, you're going to start noticing now that the technology in 2024 has shifted to breathable waders. When breathable waders came along a couple of seasons ago, or I say a couple of seasons ago, it's actually been a little bit longer than that. That really changed the game as far as being on the move and having your waders on. Breathable waders made it a lot easier to move freely and to take those waders on and off as needed when you need to get them on or take them off. I really love the breathable waders. That's what I personally use. I really think that it's a great concept. It made those days of having thick neoprene waders and having to, pull those things to put them on, and then eventually you break a sweat because you're moving around. You may be walking into a spot, you may be setting out decoys, and you would start to break a little sweat inside those neoprene waders, and then eventually you would get cold even though you had insulated waders. Well, those days have gone away with breathable waders. Now, with the technology, it pulls the moisture typically away from the skin, and it allows that moisture to exit those waders, therefore not leaving you sweating inside the waders themselves, which is the huge advantage to breathable waders nowadays. So when you have that new technology, you're typically going to be paying a little bit more, and even sometimes quite a bit more, because what shocks me today is that the price difference in all the waders on the market. What I've just pointed out to you is some of the differences in technology and what could drive the cost up or down for you depending on what the materials are in the particular pair of waders that you buy. But what really shocks me is what I see a pair of breathable waders that sell for $350 as an example. And, a great pair of waders may not, give you any trouble whatsoever. They offer a lot of the bells and whistles that you get in some of the higher end waders. But then you look at a competitor that's selling a pair of waders for $1,000 or $800 as an example. Well, people think automatically in their mind, they say, okay, well, the more I'm paying, I should be getting a better wader that's going to last me longer. And you would think that that's the case based off of what marketing tells you and what the mind is trained to think. But from what I've seen over the years, guys, I've had some of the more expensive waders that the technology, just because it claims it has better technology and it costs more, does not necessarily mean you're going to get more use out of that particular pair of waders. So a great example that I'm going to mention here, and this is not to knock this company by any means, but years back, Drake Waterfowl, which has been in the industry for so long and makes really, really good products, they were probably the first high dollar, I would say, quote unquote, high dollar wader that was out on the market with some new features such as a padded butt area. If you were sitting down or sitting on, something, you had a nice padded area in the butt area. Also reinforced knees, areas in the waders themselves. So if you were kneeling down, crawling, all that stuff was reinforced. They had more storage inside the waders, just nicer features, if you get my point there. But what I found is that when I purchased those waders, because I was thinking I was getting a better pair of waders, I always had leakage issues out of those Drake waders, those first generation Drake waders back then. And a lot of people that had those waders, they'll agree with me on that, and they had the same or similar issues with those waders. And what I realized over time is that a lot of the high-end waders, although they have more bells and whistles with them, such as more storage, nice hand warmer pockets, all that stuff that's built into those waders to supposedly make them better and worth more to be able to sell retail-wise, that also translates to there is more sewing done on those waders. There's more stitching that has to be done on those waders. And therefore, it creates more areas for those waders to ultimately fail in those areas and cause leakage over time. So oftentimes nowadays, what you're going to see in these pairs of waders and these brands that are high dollar waders that are running in that $6,000 to $1,000 range is typically, yes, you're going to see more bells and whistles. They're going to have nicer features on them than the cheaper stuff. And they'll also offer a nice warranty that comes with that product. So, not only are you having to pay for nicer features in those waders, hopefully getting a pair that'll last you longer than a cheap pair of waders, But to be honest with you guys, if I'm being 100% honest with you, a big part of what you're paying for is a warranty with those waders. Because ultimately, the companies that are making them know that they're going to fail. They're all made to be disposable, whether it's a cheap wader or a high-end wader, and you are paying for the warranty that they are going to implement once you have a failure on those waders and you have to get in touch with customer service. So yes, it is nice to have a warranty come with them. It is nice that these companies will back up their product and offer a good warranty. But if you're paying $1,000 for a pair of waders in the market today, how many pairs of $100 waders could you buy throughout the seasons to equal what it would cost that to get to that $1,000 pair of waders? That's a question that you have to ask yourself as an outdoorsman and as a waterfowl hunter. Are you willing to boot $1,000 up front for a high-end pair of waders that's going to, potentially last you for a couple of seasons? Or are you going to go down to your local academy or Bass Pro Shops or local sporting goods store and maybe spend $100 to $300 or $350 on a pair of waders that's going to last you just as long, and then you could turn around and go and buy a new pair if they do fail? So that's the great debate, guys. Do you want to buy a cheaper pair of waders and see how long they'll get you out of it? Or do you want to buy an expensive pair of waders and see how long you're going to get out of them, but also have a warranty on the back end of them in case you need to use it? I don't know. That's really up to you, and that's something that you as a hunter have to determine and make that decision. And also, you have to have a budget range that you have to stay within, and that's going to mainly factor into what decision you make off of those waders and which ones you're going to buy. I get that question asked to me quite a bit is, I have a budget set for $500. Should I spend $500 on a pair of waders? Well, in my opinion, personally, guys, I think there's a lot of companies out there, and I'll mention just a couple. I think Cabela's branded waders have always been a great value for the money. Typically, you're not going to spend anything over about $300 on a Cabela's pair of waders, and they have an excellent warranty through Cabela's and now Bass Pro Shops on their waders. They back their products up, and they make a good product. I think they always have, and they do till this day. Also, another company out there that I would recommend is High and Dry. High and Dry is a company that has put a lot of time and research into waders and improving the wader game. And I have friends of mine that hunt quite a bit throughout the season, and some of them are guides, and they use High and Dry waders. And we are not affiliated with High and Dry by any means, but they're a company that I feel confident in telling you about if you're looking at a new pair of waders, that they have had a lot of success. People are very happy with the High and Dry brand, and typically you're going to be somewhere in that $300 to $350 range. The technology is there in those waders. They don't have a lot of seams. They don't have a lot of opportunities for leakage, and they tend to do what they say is keep you dry throughout waterfowl season, and that's what you're ultimately looking to accomplish. So those two brands are, two brands that I have a lot of faith in. When you're talking big box retails or local companies that you'll see in your areas, I know down here in the South we have Academy Sports and Outdoors. The Magellan brand is Academy's brand. They offer waders by Magellan, and a lot of friends that I have that hunt with the Magellan waders do like them. They find that they're very reasonably priced, and they also have good durability out of them. They tend to get several seasons out of them, and when you're looking at a budget priced wader, then you really can't ask for much more than that, Then you have the flip side of the coin where you look at companies such as Sitka, Shin, some of those companies there, and those companies are phenomenal companies. Don't get me wrong by any means, guys. I buy some of their products. I just can't afford a $1,000 pair of waders or even a $600 to $800 pair of waders. I don't want to invest my money in the gear that I buy in a pair of waders that are that expensive when I think I could get a budget pair of waders that'll do exactly the same job and hopefully get me just about as long as those will last. So that's just my opinion on that for me personally, but that doesn't mean that that's the right decision for you. Some of you probably use both of those brands that I mentioned right there, and maybe have paid those premium prices of $800 to $1,000 for a pair of waders, and you may love them and like them, and they're doing exactly what they're supposed to do and what they advertise them to do. And on top of that, like I mentioned, they offer a great warranty on top of them. So that's great. If you're in that category, then hey, I do not knock that. I think that that is something that's your choice, and it works for you. It works for you, and that's the way way you should do it. So, it's really, like I said, this topic when it comes to waders, man, I could see it get heated sometimes when we talk about brands, and no matter if it's waders or any kind of gear review that we do on certain brands, it could get heated and become a heated topic very quickly amongst hunters. But what I would tell you is that the technology altogether in clothing and waders falls into that as well, for waterfowl hunting has improved drastically over the last decade or so. They have great options no matter what price point that you're at and what fits your budget. And it really ultimately comes down to, where do you want to spend your money? Do you want to spend most of your money on a high dollar pair of waders, or do you maybe want to go for a more budget friendly pair of waders and therefore use some of those funds in that budget that you have to be able to put it towards other types of gear for your waterfowling repertoire? So it really comes down to what you want to spend. But I can tell you that the technology has improved in all areas, whether it's lower end or higher end. And my experience personally, that I've seen a lot of the budget-friendly waders outlast some of the higher end stuff. And I've had some of the higher end stuff, or at least mid-range stuff, I guess you could say, that I've paid in that $400 or $500 price range. So that's just my experience on it, guys. But you tell me what you think down in the comments. If you have any kind of questions or concerns on what we talked about in this video, then leave it down in the comments. I'd love to get back with you and answer any questions that you may have. But if you got anything out of this video, guys, we'd appreciate it if you give us a thumbs up and smash that subscribe button if you haven't already. And until next time, this is Jacob with Last Stop Waterfowl Outdoors TV. We'll see y'all soon.